The story begins in a microbus where we see a groom with his family. With them, there is also a professor who is a family relative. Next, we see that one of the tires of the microbus getting busted. The groom's dad is really unhappy with all this. He tells the professor that this is a bad woman and he should have never agreed to come this far to get his son married. The professor calms him down as the micro gets fixed. Then we see the groom and his family and the professor arriving at the bride's house. Shockingly, the bride's house is empty, which is unlike a house where someone is about to get married. It's usually full of people and music. Then we see the groom's dad shouting angrily and asking for the bride. A boy appears and says that someone has died today in this house due to a snake bite, which is why everybody in this house is mourning. The boy apologizes to the groom's dad for the inconvenience and tells him to stay in the village for the night. Next day, the marriage will take place. Some decides to stay in the bride's house. Some goes to stay with the neighbors nearby. The professor gets picked up by a local teacher named Sudakanta, whose house is across the river. Next, we see Sudakanta and the professor arriving at an old house which looks haunted. The professor learns that Sudakanta lives alone and has no living family members. After the dinner, Sudakanta and the professor chit-chat a bit about their work, but then suddenly, out of nowhere, Sudakanta asks the professor if he believes in ghosts. The professor laughs, but right then, a sudden gust of wind takes out the light in the room. The professor gets scared. Sudakanta lights a match to bring back the light to the room they have been sitting. Then he tells the professor regarding his encounter with a real ghost who still visits him in this house. Sudakanta starts his story from the very beginning. We move backwards in time and see Sudakanta in his younger self. He is to be married to a beautiful girl, but the girl dies one day drowning in a nearby pond. This shocks Sudakanta. He becomes really sad and decides not to marry in his life. Then, as years pass by, we see Sudakanta's family members dying one after another, making Sudakanta lonelier. Then we see Sudakanta at his older age. He is a local teacher by then. One night, when he is coming back from school, he feels scared for no reason. When he was about to cross the river, he sees a dead body of a young girl who looks exactly like the girl he was supposed to marry many years ago. He takes the body with him to the house, as he can see dogs nearby who could make a feast out of her. He feels sad for the girl. Finally, when Sudakanta reaches home with the girl's dead body, he suddenly starts feeling scared again. He sees spirits of his family members appearing in the front yard, calling him. Suddenly, the dead girl wakes up behind him. She tries to grab him but misses. Next, we move back to the present time, where we see Sudakanta and the professor sitting face to face. Sudakanta says that he ran away that night. Next day, when he came back, he saw the dead body of the girl, bruised and lifeless. The professor and Sudakanta don't sleep that night. Sudakanta shows the bite mark left by the ghost on his leg to the professor. The professor looks shocked. Next day, the marriage doesn't take place due to the change of mind from the bride's family. The professor and the groom's family come back to the city. Next, we see the professor busy at his work in his home. His girls tells him that someone came to visit him. The professor sees an old man sitting in his living room. The professor says that he doesn't have time to talk to anyone now. The old man asks the professor if he can come back some other day. The professor gives him a time and a date. Next, we see the old man coming back again. This time, the professor asks the old man regarding his intentions. The old man says that he is also a professor. He teaches abnormal psychology, and his name is Misir Ali. Misir Ali has heard Shudakanta's story from one of his students who probably heard it from the professor. Misir Ali says that he is fascinated by these kind of stories and he wants to hear it from the professor himself. The professor tells him the story from start to finish. To his amazement, the professor sees Misir Ali taking notes during the storytelling process. When the story ends, Misir Ali laughs and tells the professor that the story is a fake. The professor feels offended and asks him why he thinks that. Misir Ali tells him that this is a typical ghost story where the dead body is never seen by anybody else but the victim, in this case Shudakanta himself. The professor tells Misir Ali that he will find out about the body. A few days passes by. We see the professor gathering information regarding the girl. It turns out that a dead body was actually found in Shudakanta's house and later buried in the village. There was even a case filed in the local police station. The professor lets Misir Ali know about the dead body. Hearing this, Misir Ali rushes towards Shudakanta's village to find out everything he can about the case. Unfortunately, Misir Ali couldn't find Shudakanta as he was visiting one of his distant relatives. So he asks around the village people regarding the incident. He even stays one night at Shudakanta's house but sees no ghost. After getting back, he analyzes all the facts he gathered so far and convinces the professor to accompany him to the village to meet Shudakanta again. The professor refuses at first, but after reading Misir Ali's notes, he gets curious. In the last scene of the story, we see Misir Ali, the professor, and Shudakanta all sitting around a fire, listening to the same story. When the story ends, Misir Ali looks at Shudakanta and asks him to show the bite mark. Misir Ali says that the bite mark is the weakest part of the story. Hearing this, Shudakanta gets confused. Misir Ali then asks permission to present his version of the story. Shudakanta and the professor both look at Misir Ali with curious eyes. Misir Ali thinks that in that particular night, Shudakanta actually found a girl wandering around in the streets and brought her back to this house. Then he tied her hands and feet so the girl wouldn't be able to escape. The bruise mark on her body clearly showed the struggle the girl went through. The girl tried saving herself by biting Shudakanta's leg, but she couldn't save herself. The girl must have been in this house for a while, getting tortured or raped by Shudakanta. Nobody could hear her scream as the house is across the river and there are no families nearby. Shudakanta looks toward Misir Ali in shock. Misir Ali says that he doesn't have any concrete evidence to prove his story, but he knows he's right. The story ends with a small note from the police. Apparently, Shudakanta has turned himself in and accepted the blame for the girl's death. As he was really old, he died in the prison cell.